I hope you all are doing well. Today in this video, I'm going to show you a little bit of my process of how I made January's, um, what do you call it, envelopes for my mail club. I will say this is not the full process. I totally forgot to record in the middle of my process, so it'll only be some of the stamps and then my packing process, but it does give you a view into what I do for you guys. So the theme for January was A Knight's Quest. And the reason why I chose this theme is because I was kind of imagining my mail club members and I as if we were our own knights starting a new quest for the new year 2026. So what I decided to do was make these lino print stamps, carve those, and then use those to decorate pre-made envelopes instead of what I had been doing, which was using children's books to create envelopes. I actually really enjoyed the process of designing these simple stamps, carving them out, and creating patterns and stories with them on the envelopes. I thought it was just a nice way to venture out into a new kind of medium that I've been wanting to try more of, and a fun way to try something a little different with my mail club. Lino printing is a fairly new medium for me, and let's see, my first encounter with it was at a workshop a few years ago at a local town, and it was like a super easy thing that they put together. They had purchased like the materials for us to use and given us some stencils or inspiration, and they kind of just let us have at it and explore the medium, which I thought was really fun. So you saw me already draw my design for the sword, and you draw it onto this it's kind of like an eraser is how I would equivalent to a pad that's kind of like an eraser. It's soft and kind of rubbery, and you carve out of it. And you've got to be very careful because if you're not careful, you might go into your design and mess things up, and then you'd have to figure out how to work around that. But the process in itself is fairly simple as long as you're willing to take the time and have the patience to do that. I'm going to go ahead and stamp that now, and you'll see how the design turned out, and I think that these all looks really cool. I know that I'm only showing you the sword, and I believe it's the helmet, but I did make up 5 designs for this pattern, or I guess for my theme to create patterns with. I really liked the concept of making my own stamps for this set of envelopes. It was really fun to just brainstorm and try to see how I can make that happen in this format, and I think they turned out really well. So even though you aren't going to see it, I'll explain what my process was with stamping the envelopes. Is after I had all my designs made, I would take my ink pad that you saw earlier, and I would just simply kind of make up a story. Kind of quest related because those were the elements I was working with. So like maybe one of them someone got was a lot of coin stamps, some scrolls, and a sword. And I was trying very hard to make sure each one was unique in its pattern so that there weren't any duplicates and that each envelope was unique, essentially. And I believe I stamped 21 individual envelopes front and back, being mindful to try to tell a story with what stamps I was using on each envelope. I ended up actually challenging my mail club members in my thank you letter to write a story based off one of your envelopes and send that to somebody. I want to see their creative juices get working, and they don't have to do that, of course, but if they don't know what to send somebody and are looking for inspiration, I hope that those envelopes were inspiring to make something like a story. So that was the last of the footage that I had for my lino print making process. And like I said earlier, I didn't get any of the stamping process, but from here on, working on like the final touches, i.e. the thank you note and my packaging process, you'll see all of that. So what I do is I write my thank you note on my iPad, and then I'll print those out so that everyone has one. It's handwritten in a sense, but I make sure to leave a space for the name and in my name so that those are handwritten so it feels a little bit more personalized. And I also make sure that each month this note is changed so it fits the theme or the time period that it's being written in. I had this really good idea for this theme, so I'm imagining like old maps that have like the burnt crispy edges. What I ended up doing was I printed this off on some newsprint that I had, and I'm writing their name super fancy as nicely as I can. And then after I write their name and my name, I actually burn the edges with the lighter that I have at home, and I think that the result turned out really well. Right now, though, let's go back to the writing. What I was doing here was I was obviously making sure their name is spelled right, but I also had a reference for how to write their names in a fancy way, and I did add a little bit of my own flourish, like those extra curlies and stuff. But I think that the names turned out really well. They were very beautiful, in my opinion, and I hope the people who received them liked them. So as you can see, I am using a glass dip pen, and then the ink that I'm using is actually some walnut ink that I made at a class at a local nursery last fall. And it's kind of hard to use this walnut ink because it tends to bleed and feather a whole bunch, but I was really happy that this newsprint did not do that much, which was a little surprising because if you are familiar with newsprint, it is on a thinner and it's on the thinner side, and I believe it's not coated in any way, so it's like very absorbative and will tend to feather, but it really didn't do that with this ink, which I'm happy about. After I get all these names written, oh, it looks like we're still doing more actually. This one is actually for my mom. You'll probably see her name pop up a lot just because I know she wouldn't mind her name showing on the screen very often. Um, Shout out to parents who support your small business ideas and crazy ideas and are always there for you and rooting in your corner. So here I go with my lighter, super scary, inside, unventilated. It's alright, we had the fan going, and I made sure I was in a very controlled environment because we don't want any incidents happening and to make any unexpected emergency calls. So I just made sure to have my incense tray handy, and actually I know some of you might be taken aback with me using these rocks as something to put my paper out on, but they worked really well, and I think that it was alright, and they don't do anything else but sit on a windowsill, so I'm not worried about it that much. So it was kind of an interesting experience working with this on this step, because you have to work quickly, because if you get distracted or whatnot and let the page burn, your message burns too, and it might get out of control. But you also have to work slowly to make sure that you're being careful about what you are burning and how it's being burnt. But those are what they look like in the end, and I think they looked really good. So now that my thank you notes are finished and they've been signed and addressed, we are going to start wrapping the envelopes. If you're a part of my mail club or have ever looked into my mail club, it is you receive 3 envelopes. So I have them bundled up in that little brown ribbon, and this iridescent cellophane, I guess is what it's called, is stuff that I had from school. I actually used it for a school project, and I didn't use that much, and I have this huge big roll, so I figured this is a good use for it. I think it makes a really pretty touch, and it'll actually be used because I don't know what else I would be using it for. So I use the cellophane to wrap my envelopes and put it all into a pretty nice package, essentially. This is often one of my least favorite steps in my mail club process because the cellophane is really hard to work with. It's slick and slippery, so when you get it nice and tight, it won't stay tight unless you make sure you are keeping your eye on it. And folding it up can be a little difficult just because it is slippery, like I said, and it doesn't like to stay in place, like I said earlier. So this next step, what I do is I get my tape all prepped out so I don't have to use both hands to cut more tape. And then I'll kind of try to fold it like a present box, but in a more flat form, as you can tell, obviously. And I also like make sure that none of the raw edges are out. So I'll fold the two triangles in. I'll fold that little trapezoid shaped flap in half and fold that up so that theoretically it's all super nice and as clean as possible. Sometimes I just get super frustrated, and some people's little packages might be a little more wrinkly than others, but hey, it works, it does the job, it looks beautiful, and I think it adds a nice little touch. During a lot of my work time on this, I actually listen to music or YouTube videos, or I don't know, just having something happening in the background because it gets very lonely, and I like having noise going on in the background. You've probably heard quite a bit of it going actually throughout this video, not just because it's going while I'm working and I'm recording. Sometimes I will put my earbuds in so that my camera won't pick up that sound, but I kind of like the I don't know. I like the ambiance of having the noise in the background. It makes me feel like that there are people around me, even though it's just me and my boyfriend in the house, and usually he's in a different room. And it just kind of, I don't know, maybe it's because I grew up in a house with a lot of people, and there's always noise happening. So living with just two people in. Anyways, isn't that fun packaging and pretty? I know it's pretty wrinkly on that side, but I think in general it looks very good. Now I'm working on the exterior envelope. I make a lot of envelopes if you haven't noticed. This one is the one that the recipient, my mail club members, are going to be receiving. Like it's the outside envelope. Pretty self-explanatory. And in some situations like this one, the envelopes that I'm providing for my members are actually bigger than a standard envelope, so I have to make my own. And so what I just did here was I went to a local craft store and I got scrapbook paper and just cut that down to size so it fits the envelope. And now I'm going to use my envelope maker to help guide me on where to fold and how to cut things, and you'll see that process. If any of you were members in, I believe, October or November, you got envelopes that were made with the same tools, because I used children's books pages. And so this was the same process that I did to make those envelopes. After you score the folding lines, you cut out these little corners in like the middle of the edge, because then you won't have the paper overlapping when you fold, and I think that'll make sense as you see me fold it. I'm just double checking here that my little package will fit inside that envelope. And then now I'm going to do a very important step in my opinion. Sometimes the postal system can be a little rough on our envelopes and they get torn on the edges. I've experienced this a lot with my pen pal letters, at least the ones that I receive, and I always take the extra step to line the edges with tape. This way that it makes the edges a little more tough to rip and tear. And since these are products that I am sending people because they paid for it, I am putting the tape on the inside. That way it looks just a little bit cleaner than having the tape on the outside. So if I was actually working on just a regular pen pal letter, this tape would be my very last step on the outside of my envelope. But since it is not that situation, I put it on the inside. But it does exactly the same job. It enforces the envelope and helps make it more resistant to tears. When I'm making envelopes in quote-unquote bulk, when I'm making more than like 5 envelopes, this is also a very tedious, kind of annoying step in the process, but I do think it is a very important and valuable step to do, just to make sure that your guys' stuff goes out all safe and isn't harmed in any sort of way. Oh, and here's the pattern for the paper. I know that was very brief. I was imagining, when I was picking out this paper, I was imagining doing like a map, getting like a world map type scrapbook paper, or like, I don't know, just kind of something vintage looking like that to match the quest theme. But my boyfriend actually suggested this paper. It's a little more Victorian than like medieval, but I do think it gives that um, fairy tale quest-y vibes. Maybe not super duper, but I think they went really well with my theme. As you can see, I am pulling out my cutting board, and this is just to help me make sure that I am making my lines nice and straight. When I first started my envelope making journey, I was notorious for slightly crooked envelopes. So having this grid behind me that has nice straight lines, perpendicular, right corners, all that good stuff, helps me make sure that I am presenting beautiful envelopes and not rhombuses. And when you're making these envelopes, personally, I think this is one of the most satisfying steps because you get to fold that paper down and then it becomes a beautiful, perfect rectangle. And I think it'd make more sense if you guys were actually doing this process than just hearing about it. It just is very satisfying to fold your paper and then take the book the book bone thing and make that fold nice and crisp. Now that is done, I need to obviously glue down my sides. So what I do here is sometimes I'll double check to make sure the pattern on the front is facing the way that I want it to. Sometimes the pattern is like very obviously, oh, this way's up, and sometimes it doesn't really matter. This case, it doesn't really matter, so I'm going to go ahead and glue those two bottom angles and then fold that bottom flap up onto it and make sure it's nice and well sealed. That way, so as you can see, this will be the pocket. And then what I'll do is I'll cut that little corner that's peeking up right there. Cut that so it's flat like any other standard envelope. And then normally I'll double check and peel it up again just a little bit to re-glue it and make sure it's nice and super sticky. After that, I will clip the top edge and make it nice and round, beautiful, and then that is my envelope process. I had just finished a whole bunch of work last night and it was getting pretty late, so I decided to just pack them the next day. I still had time to do that. And this is the fun part. This is the best part, is putting everything together and making it beautiful and finalizing the mail club so they can be posted. So I will obviously put in the 3 envelopes that people are paying for. And this envelope I accidentally made a little bit snug, but I was able to get those in there after a little bit of struggling. The rest of them won't be that tight, but I got those in there. And I call this workshopping. This process is when I do the same step until it's all done. So I'll fill all the envelopes until I am all done with those. Then once that step is done, I'll go to the next step. I call it workshopping, or I will do this with a lot of things, not just my mail club. I'll do it with like making a whole bunch of, just like a whole bunch of prints, or like a whole bunch of things that are repetitive. Like maybe sewing, I will like cut out all the pieces, and then, well, I guess that's pretty, I don't know. I'm gonna stop talking about that. And now that all of those have the 3 envelopes in there, I'm putting in the thank you notes. And I have to keep an eye on whose thank you note is in what envelope, because I'm really scared that someday I'm gonna put in like somebody's envelope and then on the outside I'm gonna write someone else's name. Wouldn't that be embarrassing? I'd be not exactly annoyed, but it would be humorous to me if I received an envelope that said my name, but on the inside it was actually for somebody else. Here I am weighing them. My weigher thingy, my scale. My scale is pretty old and kind of banged up, so I don't really trust what it says, so that's why I weigh each one multiple times. As you can see, sometimes it says there's weight on it when there's nothing on there and stuff like that. Someday I will invest in a brand new scale, but for now I'm working with what I've got. And so, as you can see, I am still weighing them, making sure they're under an ounce so I don't have to pay any additional postage. And since they are, I'm going to sprinkle in some of those fun little happy face sprinkles. Personally, I love a touch like that. I love it when my pen pals send me little extra sprinkle bits in the envelope. I think it's super fun and super cute. And you guys have to like it now too, because I just put them in your envelopes. And something else I like to do with my envelopes after I decorate them and all that good stuff is, I guess, decorate them some more. And usually that means doing some drawing on the back. So I wanted to make sure that everything was still in theme and stuff like that. So I'm using this gold pen and writing in Pigeon Post Mail Club, which is the name of my mail club. And then after everything's sealed, I'll do some more doodling. But while things were flat, the reason why I did this now is because I could lay it flat on the table. I didn't have to worry about things in the envelope making my writing bumpy or rough and messing it up. I had a little bit of trouble with those pens just because the paper had so much ink on it that it didn't really want to accept more ink, but I did get it to work. In the meantime, I did take the time to write down the member's name and address and my return address, and I didn't really show that because obviously there are personal addresses on there that people don't want shared. But now that the goodies are all packed up and I know that the right person's slip is inside the right person's envelope, I'm gluing them shut. And yeah, I'm gluing them shut. Pretty self-explanatory, I think. And after they all get glued shut, I will continue with the drawing and decoration on them. I want to make sure that these are glued very well. That's why you see me do it for so long, because there will be no other seal on the envelopes to make sure that it doesn't stay open. And I know that these envelopes, at least in my experience with my pen pals, I've had envelopes pop back open sometimes. So extra glue on these ones. And yeah. I think this is also another pretty satisfying part of making my mail club is like just watching the glue go on nice and smoothly and covering it up. It's satisfying. I don't know how else to explain it, but it's a nice part in my opinion. The glue is so smooth on the paper. I don't know. Now I am gonna go ahead and shut my glue stick, otherwise it will dry out. And I am going to grab my pins and do some decorations. Normally I draw a pigeon on the back of my envelopes to emphasize my brand, but because it's patterned already and I don't really want to take away from the pattern as much, I'm just going to draw these fun stars and swirls and make it pretty that way. And then here in a moment I will get my logo and stamp that on there. But I kept it pretty simple this time compared to other mail club themes that I've sent out with the pigeon on there. I just decided it might just be easier without it. And here I go with my logo stamp. I absolutely love this. I got it customized for my brand and it's been amazing. I like to put those on my envelopes so people know that they have an official Pigeon Pages envelope, and there it is. Now is the time to go out and post them. Try going down a little bit. Yeah. Got one more. So shaky. Oh yeah, these are gonna be so good.
Ooh, found one.
Nice.
One of those.
That's the hazard question. Asking if there's anything in there liquid fragile perishable or potentially hazardous.
Okay. So we got that one on there.
Beautiful.
Is there anything else we can do for you guys?
I don't think so.
I told you on the 17th, there'll be a little poker face survey. It's gonna pop up on your.
Oh, I'll have to cover some of those numbers. Cool. Nice. With those all posted and sent out, I am now getting ready to edit everything I just recorded. I am just double checking in my notebook to make sure that I am going to be working on the correct video. I have a nice little list that tells me what I should be doing at what time. And then after that, I'm just editing, you know? I've got some good ASMR coming up, I think. We'll see. And just a little peek at my editing process. It's pretty boring, so I won't show you too much. If you've made it all the way through the video, thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys watching it all the way through. And if you like this and want to see more, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. But other than that, the video's done, and I'll see you next week. Bye!